Test. Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Okay. All right. So sorry about the technical issues there. Feedback from TikTok. I have to have two different TikTok apps, two different apps to do TikTok. I had to shut TikTok off, unfortunately. Okay. So what I want to do is go back to basics. I want to talk to you guys about GRC. I want to talk to you from the perspective of somebody maybe you don't know, you've never heard of it, you don't know what it is, and you want to know more. This is something I've been doing for many years, and so I really know a lot about it. So I decided to take it back to basics, and we'll expand from here. And I'll take questions after, but I want to give an overview first. All right. So, number one, it stands for governance, risk management, and compliance. It's not just one thing. The governance piece is decides how the rules are played for information in your organization. The risk part talks about figuring out what you're going to do if things go wrong. And compliance is making sure that you can prove that your organization is doing what they're supposed to do within your industry standards. The one thing that to take away is that GRC is used when information is extremely important. If the data that you're using is very important, GRC becomes more and more important for you to use, to have. You'll notice that smaller organizations don't typically have any kind of GRC. And there's a reason for that. It's expensive, it's time consuming. There's things you can do for a small business with GRC, but the bigger organizations really have to spend more time with it. And it's because the more important your information is, the more you have to protect it. What you're doing with GRC is explaining the who, what, when, where, and why of the data. What happens if the data is stolen? Are we in compliance with laws? Federal laws, state laws, provincial laws, industry laws. And those laws, those regulations become more and more important when you're dealing with information. Think of it like this. You go to the DMV, you're hoping that the DMV is protecting your information. So there's standards that are in place for them to do things like encrypt your information, to do things like make sure it doesn't get leaked to private organizations, make sure that they have virus protection on the local systems that are dealing with your credit card information, if you're paying for your registration, or your ID information, if they have to look up and verify who you are. So all of those things are super important. And that's why GRC exists. Now, let's break down each one of these. Governance is really about culture, the culture of the organization. The organization itself has to put in place rules and rules themselves to make sure that the information is not being used improperly, that their systems are not used improperly. And that is done at a management level. Now, there's different aspects to this. It's not just management. There's other aspects that people don't really think about, like project management. Project management is like an arm of governance, because they have to make sure that the rules are being played correctly, that everybody's going in the same direction. Project managers are making sure people are going in the same direction. So that is an example of governance, a type of governance, aside from actual information managers. So these are the people who are at a higher level. It's the C-level execs who are approving the risk. It's people who are responsible if things go wrong. Executive function, project managers, program managers, who are a lot of times over multiple programs at once. These are all people who are directly into governance. And I would argue also GRC officers are also doing a bit of governance, because there are a lot of times the belly button that are bringing people together to make sure that we're all going in the same directions for cybersecurity. That's governance. I think the easiest way to understand governance is information management. How are we making sure that our organization, that the people in our organization, the users, are following policies? So a lot of times you're doing policy, you're doing procedures, you're doing standard operating procedures, stuff like that. Is if you want to nail down governance, it's things like that. Lots of meetings, things like that. Risk gets a little bit more technical, because risk is not just policies, procedures. It does include those things, but it gets into protecting the information, the confidentiality, the integrity, all that kind of stuff. Now, I've done risk, exclusively done risk, where I'm actually a risk consultant. Like I've been in jobs where I was just a risk consultant. Like I would take on clients and we would determine the risk of your systems. We would do a scan and then we would go through it and evaluate what's the risk of your system. So it includes things like vulnerability management, vulnerability assessments, making sure controls are in place. This is auditors, security control, assessors, things like that. Those are all. And then there's tons of tools for risk management. There's scanners, there's compliance, monitoring compliance of individual systems. And it's not just systems that you're scanning. There's not just systems that we're doing assessments on. It could be physical security. Those could pose a risk. Environmental issues, like maybe your system's running too hot and they shut down. That's a risk. And it could also be like disaster recovery. Those are types of risks. So you can see how that itself, that one area of risk management, can get into things like site surveys. It can get into physical security. It can not just scanning, not just security control assessors, not just auditors, but all types of other areas where you're dealing with risk. All of those things count in the R portion of GRC. You can see how it's not just one thing. And then compliance. This is what most people think about when they think of GRC. Compliance. What is it? So the best way I can explain it is if you take two different industries, take the government and take healthcare sector. They both have different industry standards and laws and regulations that they have to abide by. For the federal government, a good example would be FISMA, the Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2014. So what is that? What is it? It's a law that just says that we're going to modernize all the infrastructure of the federal government, and we're going to make sure that there's security in place, there's security controls, that we're doing due diligence across the board. Now it goes into greater detail about that, and it's actually signed into law. It's been signed into law twice. And it's a bipartisan issue where everybody comes together and they all agree, okay, we need to protect, as a nation, we need to protect our information. Nobody disagrees with that. And that was signed into law. And then to make sure that those things are done properly in the federal government, you have special publications, you've got different documentation that goes forward to say, okay, here's how we're going to do it. So there's the regulation that says you will do this and it mandates it. And then there's other special publications and guidance that says, here's how we're going to do all this stuff. Go into another sector, finance sector or healthcare sector. They've got HIPAA, which goes into healthcare and insurance. They've got to protect patient information, the digital records of patients. They've got to protect the insurance data. So that goes into all the financial aspects of it. They've got to do things like encrypt the data if it's on a certain network. They've got to make sure that if the nurse practitioner or the nurse has a printout of the patient's information, that doesn't get leaked anywhere but to the patient or who the patient deems necessary to get that information. And that comes down from laws in their industry. And if they violate that, there's going to be a lot of penalties, and maybe they'll lose reputation and clients and things like that. So that gives you an idea of what compliance is all about. And every industry has some kind of compliance, especially the larger the industry is and the more important the information is in that industry, the more you're going to have compliance is going to play a bigger and bigger part. Just to name a few: manufacturing, beyond finance, healthcare, and governance. Government, the federal government, you got the state government, you've got tribal entities, you've got all kinds of different sectors and industries, pharma, all kinds. And they have different rules, regulations that they have to abide by. And that's compliance. Bringing all of these things together, you've got a GRC, you got GRC type folks like myself, many other folks out there. In the federal government space, they call it something different. They call it ISOs, Information System Security Officer, but it's the same. It's a GRC position, is what it is. They might call it a HIPAA officer. They might call it there's just different names for it, but it's really doing the same type of stuff. Getting into technical versus GRC. So technical versus GRC, I would say there's a lot of overlap between the technical, what you're doing technically, and GRC. So, and more so nowadays. Nowadays, when you get a GRC person in, they're wanting more and more you to do more and more technical stuff. So it's really important that you have a background as much as possible in knowing how systems work, configuring systems, all that kind of stuff. There is some overlap, but there's a difference as well. Typically, your technical security people are very deep on a specific tool or a type of system, an operating system. They're very deep on one thing or a group of things. It's one thing. GRC people, they're supposed to be just tracking compliance, looking at controls, focusing on the big picture. And so that's like the biggest difference. But there, like I said, there is overlap between the two, where technical people who are very deep in one thing, they still have to do sometimes and get in those meetings and do things like that and do a little bit of project management. But your GRC people sometimes have to have a little bit of hands-on. Like in the last few jobs, I've had to have hands-on with vulnerability managers and SIEM devices and tools and endpoint, all types of stuff. Like I've had to have hands-on with those things. So there is overlap between these things. So the more you know as a GRC person about the IT fundamentals, information technology fundamentals, the better. So the federal government has its own framework, just like every industry has their own way of protecting their information. The federal government has its own framework. The reason why this is really important is that state and sometimes even other countries use this same framework, and it's called risk management framework. You can this aligns very well to things that are in the retail sector, PCI DSS. It aligns with HIPAA. It aligns with, if you know this one right here, it actually will help you with many other standards. This one is really big. So if you actually know this, it's going to help you out a lot. What it does is it aligns with the SDLC, which is System Development Lifecycle, and Software Development Lifecycle. In other words, when software developers are from start to finish creating an application that's going to be released to the public, the security is it's supposed to be anyway. It's not always a part, but it's supposed to be from the beginning of when you first start the system, you're thinking about security, till the last part when you're actually decommissioning or getting rid of that application or operating system. It's this, the security is all the way through the life cycle of that. And in a big picture view of risk management framework, if I can explain it in just a couple words, it all comes from the NIST Special Publications 800 series. of which there's, I don't know, scores of different special publications. There's probably like over 100 of them. But the main thing that you need to know as a federal GRC person is the NIST 837. And there's a couple other ones which we'll address, but that's like the main one. And what you're looking at here on the screen shows you a wheel of the entire risk management framework cycle. It starts with prepare. You're preparing the organization for a new system that's coming online or a new huge change that's happening to your system. And then it goes into categorization, and that's short for security categorization. We're going to categorize the system into either a low, a moderate, or a high impact system. What we mean is if it's a low impact system, if that system goes down, think of it like this. If the system goes down, what do we lose as an organization? Are we losing reputation? Are we losing money? Or maybe it's just a website that's mildly embarrassing that we lost information on there, but we can bring it back up in a couple days. It's no big deal. Low, right? As opposed to a high. Let's contrast that with a high. So a high security categorization would be a system that is classified. It's highly classified. It's got troop movement information on it. It's if that information leaks out, people can die. Or if somebody manipulates the information, the targets, maybe it's a weapon system and the target, somebody can manipulate the information and it can target another place. Like it's very important. So that gives you an idea between a low, just a basic website with basic and publicly available information, to a high, a classified information system that has very important information that if that data gets lost, there's actually no coming back from some of the things that could happen if that system either went down or got compromised or got corrupted in some way. So we got to categorize the system. Now, once we categorize it, that gives us an idea of what controls we need to select. So that brings us to right here, select the controls. So what's great about this is it gives this whole process is a team effort. You're not doing this by yourself. This is really an important thing that needs to hit home. I think a lot of folks that are trying to get into GRC, you believe that you got to memorize every aspect of this and you're going to be doing this all by yourself. This is a team effort. This is not just one organ. This is not one person doing it. Now, where you come into play is you got to know it enough to know, okay, I know we have to have the controls in place. And typically we have this set of baseline controls. Like in the select process, the categorization is going to tell us which controls to use. For this, we use the NIST 853, NIST 853B to be exact. And that has a baseline of your low controls, your moderate controls, and your high controls. It'll tell you which ones to use. Now, once we've chosen which ones, the team has chosen it, the organization has chosen it, it goes to the next level, which is implement. Now we got to install, deploy, configure these systems appropriately. Once we've done this, then this actually, the implementation typically takes the longest part. It takes the longest amount of time. And again, you're not doing this in a vacuum by yourself. And actually, GRC people aren't normally the people who even have privileged access to implement the controls. We're part of the process of implementing the controls, but we're not usually the ones who are putting the stuff in play. Not usually. I've been in jobs where I was part of it, where I literally was installing or configuring or doing that kind of thing on the system right alongside the system administrator. But that's not usually how it goes. When I look at all the jobs I've had, a GRC person is not usually the person who's implementing the controls. Does it happen from time to time? Yes, of course. And then you get into, let's say you've already implemented the controls. Now we have to assess the controls. That just means, do we have the correct amount of controls on our system? That's all that means. Do we have the correct controls on our system? Have they been applied effectively is a better way to put it. Have they been applied effectively? We do this through testing. There's different types of testing. We have a whole nother book that tells us how to, so think about it like this. This is really cool. So we have a pamphlet that tells us how to categorize. what controls are selected once you've categorized, how to implement the controls. That usually comes from the vendors, but we also have the STIGs, the security technical implementation guides. Then we have a book that tells you exactly how to assess this, which is the NIST 853A. And that tells you, okay, do you have a control AC controls? All right, this is exactly how you test this control. You can either do a questionnaire, an interview with the appropriate, it tells you who to actually interview. It says you need to interview these people. And then it actually gives you an idea of what questions, like what types of things you should know. It so anyway, so testing for assessments. You can do actual testing, which is to run the system or scan or do something, see the system's behavior, right? Or you can do, like we said, interviews with the people who do that, who implement the system or who are system administrators. And then finally, you can observe. Observation means it's not always a system. Sometimes it's like we've got to look at the badging of see how, if the organization has badging or has windows that are locked or doors that are shut properly, or it could be we're observing the documentation. Did they update the documentation? Is it approved by certain parties? All that kind of thing. So that's the assessment. Once we're done with the assessment, we compile all the data that we've gathered into a package. That package goes to the authorizing authority. So we go to the authorizing portion. This is, again, this is not you doing this in a vacuum. The team is doing this. As a matter of fact, this one right here is done by C-level execs. Normally the CIO type entity is doing authorization. We put our package together and then they are accepting the risk. They are determining what level of risk they're willing to take. And sometimes they come back to you and say, listen, we don't want to take this risk. You guys either need to fix this or you need to document it properly, or, okay, we can't do any of that. Remove the system if it's possible. Sometimes it's not really possible to remove it. So you've got to accept certain level of risk. And that's where the CIO has to make those big decisions. They have to make the final decision in written form to say, yes, we know that this is an issue. We cannot fix it right now because of X, Y, and Z, but here's some compensating controls. Here are other ways, mitigating controls that we're doing to where we can't fix it right now, but we've documented, we know what needs to be fixed. At some point, we're going to get rid of it, and here's why. They'll explain what's going on, and then they accept the rest of the risk. And then the final piece of this is monitoring. This is normally where we're really at. As a GRC person, I could tell you our time is mostly 90% of our time is spent in the monitoring portion because this is what we do. All of these other things, some of these other things, you're not really categorizing the system all the time. Like the categorization might change, but it's pretty rare that the categorization goes from say low to moderate or something like that. It's pretty rare. Selection of controls, the controls are usually already selected, so they're already there. And then implement, like I said, GRC people, we're not normally the people implementing the controls. We're part of the process of implementing controls. If you have a job where you're part of the implementation, you're literally patching systems or whatever, then yeah, you might spend a lot of time. And like I said, I've had jobs where I was doing this, but normally most of our time is spent monitoring. Has anything changed? Ha- can we update that? Do we have let's get a meeting in place to see if that impacts other things within our organization. So those are some of the things that go on with this is the entire picture from a bird's eye view. The main takeaway here is you don't do everything. It's a team effort. All of us are doing this together. So that the brilliance of this is that the risk is spread over the entire life cycle and to all the stakeholders. It's not just one person, and it's not supposed to be just a checklist. Now, they have been talking about updating this, but I can tell you, having done this for a long time, it takes them a long time to change any of this stuff, and I'm not seeing it right now in the real world. Okay, I got a couple questions I'll take real quick before we go forward. Larry, how you doing, man? He says a low, a medium, and a high classifications on a particular site has a direct impact on money. The cost of the site with high controls is significant. Absolutely. So it's like a domino effect. If you A lot of times when you start this process, some system owners will say, "Okay, we this system is super important." They got their money hat on because they know the more important the system is, the more money they can get. This system is so important. We need more money to fix this and that. It's so important. And then you ask them, okay, was it a moderate or a low or what is it? It's a high. It's super important. And then what they don't understand is that the higher the categorization is of the system, the more controls you got to put on it. And it's actually way more expensive and it'll break your budget if you have a moderate system that you're trying to portray as a high or a low system that you're trying to portray as a moderate. You want it to be, what's the right word, commensurate with the level of risk that's there. That means whatever level of risk you want your controls to meet just that risk. That's risk management is the name of the game. We want to manage the level of risk with the same level of the actual risk. We don't want to inflate it or say, "Oh, this is so important and we need to be high." You want to keep it because it's a domino effect. If you say it's a low, it goes right down. All the work and the level of effort is going to reflect that. If you say it's a moderate, if you say it's a high, all of this will reflect that the level of effort goes all the way through and it doesn't go away. And it can be very expensive, costly, and take a lot of time. So you want to be careful with that. And then Larry goes on to say stakeholder awareness of what they need versus what they want. Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So versus what they have on their budget is very important. It's very important that they understand. I've been in meetings where we were setting up a system and we were trying to determine like what is it, a moderate or is it a high? We knew it was somewhere in that vicinity. But once we explained to them, listen, these are the controls of a high. Are you sure we want to go in this direction? We were A lot of times as a cybersecurity person, as an IT person, you have an idea of what's the level of risk and what you can protect and things like that, right? So you have a solid idea that's a moderate or a high, whatever, you know already. Here's why I think it's a moderate. And that's what we're doing. We're saying, listen, we think it's this right here. We think that it's this. But we're not the ones that make the final decision. They make the final decision. Once we told them, it turns out it was a high. Okay. It was definitely a high. We were thinking we can get it to a moderate, but it was definitely high. Like in the end, it was. And we were trying to tell them to get him to lower it, listen, this is a moderate. Here's how we can keep it here. And they were like, no, it's a high. And then when we showed them the controls, they were like, but then it was too late. Like when we really all put our heads together, we're like, okay, it's definitely a high. Like there's no way around it. And they're like, damn. So we just had to make them aware of how many controls that we had to address. And then you can always tailor, it's something called tailoring the control. So you're not going to use every single control. That's another important thing to understand. And let me see, somebody said Deuce Big says we had 12 people on our team. That's exactly right. So you're going to have, it's a team effort. It's not just one person making all the decisions. When I first started, I would get really, I was coming from a physical security background. And in that, well, you're an enforcer. You're in law enforcement. You're literally a law enforcement person. Some of the buck stops with you. Like you're enforcing the law and you're making a decision on the spot a lot of times. But GRC work is not like law enforcement. It's more like you're more like a reporter, I would say. And you're a part of a team who's all making a decision on selection of controls, implementation of controls, assessment of controls. You're all coming together to do that. Now, they might rely on you and say, listen, you're the subject matter expert on this thing. What's your opinion? At the end of the day, you're not even the final say. Even if you say, I think it's this right here, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to somebody else way above your head who's going to make the final decision on the risk, on what is the acceptable level of risk for a given security issue. So that's a real big takeaway if you're really thinking about doing GRC, that it's not just you're not in a vacuum. You do need to know basic IT because when you get in that room and they start talking about all these security controls or IP addresses or something, you need to understand what they're talking about, right? Not on a not really on a hands-on basis, to be honest with you. You should do hands-on, but enough to understand what the technology itself. You're not normally going to be the hands-on person. Now, I have noticed a trend where they're going more technical. They're having us do more technical things, which I think is good because you're getting a lot of training. We're getting more of a like a multidisciplinary skill set, which I think is actually really positive. All right, let's keep going here. So let's just breeze through these. It's going to go through some of the categorization. Prepare phase. We're going to go through each one of these very quickly. The prepare phase is setting the foundation. It's making sure that really, if I can sum this up in one sentence, it's making sure people know what's going on. Because a lot of times when there's a change, people don't know what is going. They are, especially system admins, they don't know what's going on. They're doing their own thing. They're super busy. They got a lot on their plate. They got all these other priorities that they has nothing to do with what we're doing. And then all of a sudden we're like, hey, by the way, we have this thing going on. That's the prepare phase. The main thing with prepare phase is letting people know what is going on. Gathering old documentation. If you know an assessment's coming, if you know you have this new system, whatever, you're gathering information, you're getting points of contact, you're trying to figure out what's going on in the beginning. That's the prepare phase in a nutshell. This is like a new part of the risk management framework that came in Rev 2, but really it's something we've always done. It's not new in that we've always done this. Categorization, security categorization is what it is. And what we're doing is we're determining if it's a low impact, a moderate, or a high. And the way we do this is we take the information that's on the system. Now, think about this. It's very common sense based. What we do is when we have a new system, let's say system A, system B, whatever, right? We'd say, okay, what type of data, what type of information is on system A and on versus system B? What it could be, we do space telemetry, we do payroll, we do whatever it is. You'll take the top 3 or 4 most important things that system does, and that's an information type. You'll take the information type, and then you'll determine if that has a low, moderate, or high impact based off of the confidentiality, the integrity, and availability. That's it. That's all we do. So that is categorization. And like I said, it's not really done on a like a it's not a daily thing. This comes around once a year, if that, just to figure out if anything has changed. And I can tell you, usually it hasn't. So this one comes up when you're dealing with a new system, or if you have a huge change to an existing system, then yeah, this might come up categorization. It is important, but for us to change from a low to moderate or high, to go through the whole process of changing it or figuring out, okay, what kind of information types do we have, and what's the low, moderate, or impact to the confidentiality, integrity, availability. That just, we double check it every year to make sure nothing has changed. I mean, you might update some documentation, but you're not doing this on a regular basis. Selection of controls. This is a done for you thing. Once the system is categorized, this is done for you. You already have a baseline that's in the NIST 853B that talks about, okay, if you have a low impact system, it's going to have these controls. If you have a moderate, it's going to have these controls. If you have a high, it's going to have these controls. Now, where this gets into the weeds and stuff we do on a regular basis is we have to tailor these controls, because you're not going to use 100% of all the controls. A very important thing to understand. You're not going to use 100% of all the access controls, 100% all the incident response controls. And think of it like this. If you have a system that doesn't use any kind of wireless, you don't have to there's no reason to apply controls that deal with wireless. Think of it like that. That's one idea of you're not using all the controls, but there's more to it than that. There's sometimes the controls are what's called inherited. They're common controls. They come from another organization. They are somebody else controls them and manages them, and then all we're doing is taking their documentation and putting it with ours. So Selection of security controls is something we do on a regular basis, in that we're making sure that the data on the controls is still accurate. But that's done in the monitoring, continuous monitoring phase. Implementation, again, this really depends on your role. You can be an implementation person. I've just got out of a position where I was a cloud person I was mostly doing cloud stuff. I was doing cloud security stuff, a hands-on type job. On the back end, I was a GRC person. So I did very little GRC stuff. I did a lot of implementation, risk management type stuff, mostly vulnerability management type stuff. So and then a job before that, I was doing 60% documentation and then a little bit of the other stuff. Like we had access to a SIEM, so we're doing risk management. So it depends on what job is what I'm getting at. Implementation is applying, configuring the system so that it has certain controls. It's from our perspective as a GRC person, we're working with the system team or the system engineers or whoever to make sure that the controls are being placed and that they're putting the controls in that they're supposed to. And if there's something missing, we're a lot of times the ones that get informed, and then we've got to go have a meeting and say, okay, look, it looks like these controls are missing. We just got this from this scan. What are we going to do about this? And they might say that's a false positive, or they might say we did put that in place and here's our evidence, or they might say, okay, oh, we didn't know that. We're going to work on it. We need time, whatever. But implementing is like installing. And let's see, let's keep going here. Categorization. Sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button. Prepare, categorize, select, assess. Okay. Assessment of controls. This is another one that we do have a part in, and it really depends on your role. You could be an assessor. Like I've been in jobs where I'm doing assessment type work. I'm mostly doing risk assessments, or I'm mostly doing audits and on all the controls. I'm doing scanning and then taking that data and then working with the system team. But mostly I was doing assessment work. As a pure GRC person, your exposure to this is going to be, you will get some data from assessors. Somebody else is assessing it. You'll get the data. And then a lot of times you're having to help interpret that information or document what's going on. From time to time, you may have to conduct an assessment. An assessment is not just scans. It's not just the technical side. Sometimes it's looking at documentation. It could be, is this documentation accurate? Is it up to date? Has it been signed properly? Is it still in line with what we do? Assessment can be physical controls. It can be managerial controls and technical controls. One big thing to keep in mind. But another thing on assessments is it's our eyes for the system. Like that's why it's really important, because it allows us to see everything on the system. Like we'll conduct a scan. Normally scans on the federal systems are done on a regular basis. So we're always seeing data come in and seeing because there's stuff going in and out of the system, and we've got to monitor what's going on. So this is a big part of what we do, but it's like I said, it's in monitoring. This is part of continuous. There's one of the tools we use for continuous monitoring. Authorizing is done by another organization. Our part as ISOs is to gather the information, gather all the data, gather the risk assessment reports, gather data on implementation. What did they implement? Doing implementation statements, doing a system security plan, being a part of the privacy group, and then putting all that data together and sending it an authorization package to our authorizing authority. And then the authorizing official, they're the ones who make the final determination on, are we going to say thumbs up with the system or thumbs down or thumb in the middle? Like it's an interim. Yes, it's good, but you guys have to fix X, Y, and Z. And monitoring. So this is where you live as a GRC person most of the time. You get a job in GRC, you're going to be looking at vulnerability scans. This is something that vulnerability scans is one of the most unique parts of cybersecurity that you don't see in other industries. Like, you don't see it in other career paths. You don't normally see it if you're a manager, right? If you're an upper level manager, you're not really, you know about them. You don't if you are a project manager, you're not really seeing probably not going to really look at these. If you're a I if you're purely a system administrator, you will know about them. You'll see the results of them. But I could tell you, as a GRC person, as a cybersecurity person, it's one of the most unique things that you'll unique to us, to our job, is we live in these vulnerability management, these vulnerability scans. And so it's a big part of what we do because it's how we see what's going on with the system. Configuration changes is another big part of continuous monitoring. Incident tracking is a regular part of that, and risk updates. These are the things that we're normally doing on a regular. 90% of my job in the last few jobs has been doing this, unless I was doing something else. Like, I was doing implementation, I was doing assessments, I was a consultant. Then yeah, I wasn't really a 100% GRC person. But in 100% GRC ISO roles, man, continuous monitoring was the biggest part. So what do we actually do? Mainly is coordination, having meetings, coordinating with people, making sure people are on the same page as far as the engineers, the assessors, executive leadership on the same page about security and what's going on. We're like the belly button. It's like a project manager, but for security. That's how I would define it. You're doing documentation. That's a big part of what we do. You're documenting the security features a lot of times of the organization, not just the system, but the organization as a whole, making sure that stuff is accurate. You're not the only one a lot of times writing it. Sometimes I've got to reach out to the other teams to make sure the stuff is still accurate, because those guys know they're the subject matter experts on whatever procedure you have to do. They do it every day. So you got to talk to them. Interpretation is another big part of what we do. And this is why having a good, solid foundation of best security practices and IT fundamentals is going to help you, because sometimes you'll get these vulnerability documents and you have to interpret what's going on. You still have to do research. You'll go online or go to the vendor and see, okay, what is this talking about? What is this? Do we have this in our organization? What's going on? And then you're going to spend a lot of your time doing that research so you can go back and speak and interpret what's going on, and then listen, right? You got to listen to your team, because those guys, they know this way better than you. They do it every day. So you got to listen to them. So it's a lot of that. It's translation, it's interpretation, it's supporting the assessors. Like, there might be a whole nother team and they assess. That's all they do is assess on a regular basis. Okay, let me see. I've got some folks chiming in here. I appreciate you guys' input. I'm not going to take too much of you guys' time here today. Deuce Big says, I've worked on government systems. If something goes wrong, you get your right read to you and your clearance suspended. Yeah. So what I do in these situations is I'll document everything, especially if I'm talking to a manager or C-level exec. I document everything that's happening. I'm very forthcoming about everything that's going on, so that if there is a lot of times this whole blame game thing going on, and I really hate it because it's not conducive to what we're trying to do. Meaning, it's not productive, right? Playing the blame game. Let's just get to the bottom of it and fix it. And I can honestly say I've had things go wrong. I've done things wrong, and I've never had my rights read to me or had my clearance suspended. I've been on a system, I screwed up, I did something's wrong or whatever. And normally what would happen is they would, of course, you have to talk to your manager or whatever. It would go up the chain of command. You might have to do some remedial training or something. I normally it hasn't happened to me. I've even other peers, I don't know that I've had seen them lose their unless they did something criminal. That's where there's criminal intent behind them doing something crazy. Then that's yeah. And then security expert says agreed. I've seen incredibly incompetent people walk out the door for mistakes that shouldn't have happened in the first place. Yeah, what I've seen, I can say for cybersecurity positions. So first of all, GRC people don't normally have privileged access to do some crazy mistakes like that, like really bad mistakes, like where you're giving too many permissions or something like that on a very important system. What I've seen when people are walked out the door is malicious criminal activity, which I don't understand why a person would try to do that on a network, especially being an IT person, knowing that every part of it's being monitored. I don't know why you would do something like that. I've seen it more than once, and which just blows my mind. I'm like, what are you doing? They're monitoring every part of this network. What are you doing? And yeah, those people were, yeah, they're man, more than fired, bro. Like probably in jail because I mean, at that point, it's out of our hands. As the IT security person, it's out of my hands. It's Air Force ASI is looking into it or whatever. Like it's the FBI is looking at it or something. I've seen bad things, like very bad things that I don't even feel comfortable mentioning on this live. But as far as like people making mistakes, I've seen people put information on one system that's on from a moderate to a high, and they get like their hand slapped and then embarrassing or whatever, but they're not kicked out or anything. I remember when I was in, they didn't want people afraid to do their job, so they wouldn't. Those kind of mistakes would happen from time to time, and you don't want people too afraid to work with the information. You know what I mean? Like if you start kicking people out, the people are too afraid to take action. At the same time, gross negligence will get you fired. So yeah, that right there, I've seen people get in really big trouble for gross negligence. But criminal intent, oh man, yeah, that's a whole different ball game. Okay, and somebody said, "Hey, Convo Courses, how is the job search going?" It's pretty slow. Like right now, if I'm honest with you guys, it, for me to lose, for them to let our contract go at the beginning of December was really, how do I put it? Really bad. The slowest time in the year for what we do for jobs, the slowest time is in December, like December to beginning of January. So they let a whole bunch of us go. It wasn't just me. Like it was a whole bunch, like maybe a couple hundred people gone just like that. And I believe I really can't go into it because I don't know. I really still ongoing. I don't really know what's going to happen with it. But yeah, for them to do that, like it's a slump. Like I'm not getting a lot of. Normally, I get calls probably every other day, a call from a recruiter or something every a few times a week, and I get emails every day. Right now, I'm getting no emails and I'm getting no calls, except from some of you guys have reached out to me directly, which is awesome. Like I and thank you so much for that. I've gotten several people contact me directly and some promising stuff that I'm sure will pick up once we get out of the holiday season, like Monday, Tuesday through next week. Should start getting something. But to answer your question, it's not going great right now because it's the holidays. They let us go at a really bad time. This is the slowest time for new hires. So yeah, it has not gone well. But I have gotten The positive news is from this community, people reaching out saying, "Hey, man, we got a job right here." I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. We'll see how it goes. I know that nothing's guaranteed, so we'll see. But that gives me a little bit of hope. So that's great. Somebody said, "Could you give a quick rundown of what search to get a brand new person trying to get into GRC besides a Security Plus?" The way that I've been able to make these changes in my own personal career has been making lateral changes. I'll get to your certification question in a second here, but I want to readjust your perspective for a minute because I don't think certifications is like the real best way to think about it. It's like the easiest thing for people to say, "Oh, get this. I'm going to break down this S tier to F tier certification matrix and then make don't get this one instead." I'm going to switch it up and say certification is not like the best way. Not to say you shouldn't get them, that's great, but what trying to say is personally, I've made lateral changes in my entire career. My best changes have been lateral. What I mean by that is give you a specific example. When I was in the Air Force, I was a MP. I was a security forces member, security police officer. I was a physical security person. I did not do technical stuff except on my own time. I was an expert. I was a weapons specialist. That's to this day I can take apart an M16 and put it back together and fire it pretty good. For whatever that's worth, right? It's not getting me any six-figure jobs or anything, but that's what I did. So I made a lateral change. I changed from that job, cross-trained into communications, computers, and I learned all the basics about computers. Started doing hands-on. I was doing help desk, all that kind of stuff. And then from there, I made another lateral change, not by choice, by the way, to GRC, what they called it at the time, certification and accreditation. I was laterally changed to that. So I'm in the same organization and I went from this job to this job. I've done that several times. Why that's important is because I was already active duty in the military. So it's easier for an active duty person to go from this job to this job than it is from somebody from outside. Normally it is from outside the military to come in and do straight into GRC. Like it's way easier to go lateral changes. Another lateral change I made recently, I made a lateral change in the organization I'm working for, 3-letter organization, and I was a GRC person, and I made a lateral change in the same organization, parent organization, to a cloud security person. So they 2 jobs lateral. I went from here over to here. So what I'm trying to tell you to do is what the best thing if it's available to you. For some people it's not. But if you let's say you're in retail, you work in Walmart and you're a manager, a clerk or something, right? And you could look inside of that organization to see if you can make a lateral change over to IT. And then from IT, if you're in IT, even better, make a lateral change from IT to a GRC type position. Try to make a lateral change because you know the culture of that system, the culture of that organization. The best thing you can do is a lateral change. The best thing I've done has been lateral changes, not necessarily certifications. Certifications have helped. And I'm going to get to that. But if you can make a lateral change, that's the best thing. How to make a lateral change? Ask around, ask within the organization. I'm only telling you because this is what I did. I asked. I said, "I'm here. I want to go over there. How can I do that?" My supervisor really didn't know. So I went to another person in the same organization. I said, "Hey, I'm here. How can I go over here?" And somebody answered the question for me, broke it all down, and I was able to do it. And that's how it's been. Like I'll try to make a lateral change inside. If you don't like the organization, you can always use it as a stair step. Yes, I don't like working at Big O Tires or whatever, and I don't want to make a lateral change into their IT department. I don't care. I don't want to work for this organization. Do it just enough to where you can get the experience and then move. A couple things lateral changes do. Number one, the culture and the terminology and the technology that they use and all that better than anyone else. Their processes, what kind of software and hardware they use. Or even if you don't, not the person doing the maintenance on it, you know that stuff. You know the whole how it all works. So they're going to save more time and effort to train you to go from here, your current job, to go lateral. So that's one thing. The culture better than anyone. Number two, that lateral change it's faster. It's faster. It's a faster way to get you experience, direct experience that you can then build on and move on. So try to make some kind of lateral change if possible. I know this is not possible for everyone, but going into the certifications. So you said besides Security Plus, what's the best certification for GRC? Brand new person trying to get into GRC. Another good one might be CGRC. I've got that one. CGRC specifically for the federal government. The federal government looks favorably on the CGRC, and that's from I can just show you. A lot of people don't know about this one. Not as popular, Security Plus, but let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. For those who don't know, CGRC certification. Nope, that's not where I'm trying to go. And if you're looking for CGRC, as I'm looking for this thing, the official page, Ryan actually has a free resource on the CGRC that he's allowed us to upload it into my site for free, all for free. If you go to my site, convocourses.com, login.convocourses.com, you'll see that site. And let me actually put it out there for you. And so that's one that you can do for free. Like, he's got a great resource on the CGRC, but let me show you what that is real quick. This is what it is right here. The Governance, Risk, and Compliance Certification. Not cheap, as you can see. It mostly focuses on NIST 800. So the stuff I've been talking to you about, the NIST, the Risk Management Framework, is mostly what it talks about. I believe it mentions a little bit of ISO 27001, but if you want to know more information, you can download this right here for free for the small fee of your email address so they can advertise to you. But yeah, that's the CGRC. What does it talk about? Here are the main things it talks about. CGRC, let me just make this screen a little bit bigger. There it is right there. These are the domains of this certification. This is one of the top GRC certifications, but there's, for entry level, it's one of the top. But here's what they talk about. So domain one is security and privacy, governance, risk management, compliance. Everything I've been talking to you today about, this is what they talk about. This is why I harp on, I've been revisiting these things because I want people to understand it. The scope of the system, selection and approval of framework, security and privacy controls, implementation, assessment. Can sound familiar? This is what I was talking about. Yeah. So this right here is talking about all the things that are in the NIST 837. Yep. And that's the CGRC. It's not super hard. It's the questions are weird because just the nature of how ISC2 does questions. The CISSP is the way they word it is weird. That's what makes it really hard for me. It was made it hard for me anyway. But yeah, this one is good for entry level. But I would argue Security Plus is better than this because Security Plus is more flexible. But this right here is more targeted. So this is what other one could you do? See, there's not a lot that are on the same level as this and the Security Plus. There's a lot out there. Osaka has a couple. I think Sands has one, but not most of them. People just don't know anything about them, so they're not marketable. So I don't really. I'm not saying don't get them, but it's more like you're gonna get it, and then nobody's really looking for it. It's just not that marketable, and nobody knows what it is. The great thing, like I normally take certifications for a combination of things. The marketability is one, obviously, but the curriculum is really good for some of these certifications. So if this is the only one that I would say is marketable and it's pretty decent for the curriculum that I've taken that I can speak to. But yeah, I would maybe aim for that one. But there's a like I said, Isaka has one, Sans course has one, and there's a few others. Somebody said, "Do you see a big shift on-prem to cloud in GovTech, or is there still a place for on-prem IT people?" Yeah, there's absolutely still a huge place, the largest place for people who are on-prem is still the king. So on premises, what we mean is on premises. That means servers that are locally in your facility. That still reigns supreme. And actually, speaking of that, they still don't. There's not like a big solution forward for endpoint devices. That means like your desktops, your Mac systems that people are using. Yeah, there's still a huge demand for on premises systems. It's as much cloud, like you got to get out of the narratives. There's a lot of narratives saying, oh, AI is going to take over everything. Cloud, everybody's going to cloud. And yeah, cloud is getting more popular for sure. There's a huge incentive to do it. But at the same time, there's a component of cloud that's on premises. There's a on premises cloud piece that organizations can do, meaning they create their own local cloud and then they share it out to their own sites. So there's that. And then they don't really have a solution for it. Not many people are going to the AWS or the Azure solution that's endpoint. They have one, but there's not in the federal space anyway. Maybe it's coming. I don't know where they're doing like some kind of Citrix type stuff. But yeah, there's a huge demand still for it. There is something to be said about a lot of organizations going to cloud, and it is happening. In AI, of course, it's huge, but not everything. Like it's gonna take a while for it to get from here to there. In the meantime, we have time to like really develop our skills. There's still on-prem systems, like for sure. Even the place I was at, I was working in a cloud native environment, and meaning all the systems we maintained were cloud. But guess what? The system we worked on, like the actual laptop I was using, wasn't in the cloud. It wasn't a cloud system. It was a system that was on some of us were on site. So that system was on site. It was on premises. And my system connected on premises. It didn't connect in the cloud. It connected directly to an on premises server. So yeah, there's still a huge demand for it in the government. Happy New Year. Just watching your short on joining the Air Force for security, cybersecurity. Yep. Okay, let me see. Red Hat certified security administrator. It's good certification. Thanks, Larry, for that. Appreciate you. And security expert says most of the federal government is moving to the cloud, and even defense is adopting cloud solutions. However, defense maintains its own highly secure government cloud presence. Right. So what I'm seeing is they have a component of cloud. It's more scalable, it's easier to manage, yada yada yada. It's superior for sure. It's just better. But they still have a component that is on premises. There's still the last place a couple of cycles ago, a couple of employers ago, We had a cloud component again, but we still, like, both places had a cloud component, but we still had on-prem systems that we had to maintain, especially for more secure systems that, or they just don't have a solution, a cloud solution that they're comfortable using yet. Let me see here. Hey, yeah, thank you for that, Larry. Larry just posted the mango courtesy of Ryan, and he's got it out there. If you just go to Google and type in the mango, you'll see it. It's accessible. It's out there for free. Him and a peer did it, and it breaks down the CGRC certification. So if you were interested in taking the CGRC certification, his guide will break it down for you. He's awesome at just boiling things down to the most essential thing you really need, getting to the point. Like, he's doing one right now for Security Plus that I'm excited about, and he started doing one for Security X. But like, the way he boils it down to what you really need to know, like, he gets straight to the point on the key points, is really needed for getting through these types of certifications. So yeah, there you go. And if you go to our site, login.combocourses.com, in the communities, you'll see free bunch of free, more and more free stuff I'm going to put out this year, 2026. But the mango is one of the best ones. It's definitely one of the biggest, best parts of what we have for free out there. So go check that out. Let me see. Farron says Red Hat OpenShift. Yes, OpenShift is getting big too. And OpenShift is a variant of Kubernetes. Last place I worked was using some variant of that. So that's a big one. Also a big one. AWS, Google, Microsoft, all super secure government level cloud implementations at government with secret and TS level. Yep. Yep. They have a Gov Cloud that is only accessible in its own, it's got its own region, its own AZ own region, and only accessible by them on AWS, Google, and Azure. Yep, certified, Red Hat certified system admin. And then, okay, let me see. Got another one. Bruce is correct for all the cloud. For all the cloud that's out there, it's mostly hybrid. That's exactly what I'm saying. On prem and in the cloud. Yes. So most organizations right now, the implementation seems to be some sort of hybrid where you have a cloud component. And I think what's happening is, what they're trying to do is, if you have a specialized system, they're trying to put those on in a cloud environment, because it's easier to protect them. It's easier to modify and update them. It's just easier to deal with. You can use less people to do more work with in a cloud environment, which means you can grow it faster and hire more people, right? And do way more for less. So it's also potentially cheaper depending on how they deploy it. So it's just a better, but that said, there's certain solutions that they don't have an answer for yet that are better on prem still. Things like endpoint devices, your laptop, whenever you're logging in, it's still better. It's still like, maybe once internet gets a lot better or something, like there's a better solution where, and there might be one, but I'm just not seeing, still all the places I've worked at still having an on-prem system. So please advise for CISSP preparation. So CISSP, I got it a long time ago. And the way I studied for it, number one, as I took my time, I tried to, I was so nervous about it that the first thing I did was that I took the Security Plus first. I took the Security Plus in preparation for it. In retrospect, I don't. It's probably like a tenth. It's like a tenth of what the CISSP is, or more, maybe a little bit more. And it's not really the volume of data. I mean, it is, but mostly it's the way that they word the questions is different. It's so much different. Security Plus is pretty straightforward. What color is the sky? It is blue, stuff like that. But CISSP is what shade of blue is the sky? And then they'll have a few shades that seem like blue, but they're not. One is one is all comprehensive with some hard ass answers to the question. And then one is straightforward. Security Plus is very straightforward. I love the Security Plus. One of my favorite certifications ever. I think my favorite certification is Security Plus. I was taught it. I've had two different certifications. I had the old one that didn't expire. I have the new one that does expire. It's an amazing certification. But how would you train for the CISSP? What I did was I took one guide, the official guide, and then I took notes on the entire book. I went page by page, chapter by chapter, and I wrote down all the most important parts, right? If I knew it, then I could skim it. If I knew it off the top of my head, I wouldn't put that down. But if I like really had trouble with it, I'd write it down. Like the cryptography portion of it, I really had trouble with. And what I would do is to memorize it and have a better understanding as I would make notes. And then once I was done with the whole book, I took my notes and I studied my notes. And so most of my study was on the notes. And then once I was done with the notes, what I did was I started taking practice questions. You can these days practice questions are everywhere. You can even make your own practice questions using AI. So I just took hundreds and hundreds of practice questions to get my mind ready for the test. And when I finally took the test, I was ready. I passed it, and so first time, and I attribute it to my taking time. I took 1 year to do all of that. Now, I don't think you need a 1 year to do it. I don't think. I think I'm just a psycho like that. I don't believe you need 1 year to do that. That's pretty extreme. You should take your time though. However much time you need, and know your study. Know how you retain information. I knew that tactile or writing it down is the best for me to know something really. Writing it down or teaching for me is like really the best way for me to learn it. Whereas like just listening to an audio book for me is not. I'm not an audio listener. I'm not an audio learner. So hope that helps you. I was able to pass it first time. It was hard for me. It was really hard. I was like the last person in the testing room, and I kept second. I think it's because I second guessed myself, and everything was on the line for me to pass that test because it was expensive for me. And they told me like you have to have this certification to keep this job. So I had a lot on the line for that damn test. Larry, thank you for the $10. He says, as 2026 gets started, do you find Paul Jeremy security certification charts to still be accurate guide? Let me see. I haven't checked it out in a long time. For those of you who don't know, Paul Jeremy has a great site. Let me just show my screen here, where he breaks down career paths for cybersecurity. And it looks a little something like this. Actually, let me just make it a big screen. This is his site right here. I have not been to this site in a while. I found it a really good teaching reference. But here's the chart. This is what it looks like. What's great about this is if you go from the bottom to the top, on the left side, you can see that it goes beginner, medium, and expert, right? So as you go up with these certifications, they get harder and harder. Not just harder and harder, but It's a higher level of knowledge you need when you go up. So to give you an example, let me show you a cert that I took recently. That's a low level. The AZ 900. Here it is right here, the bottom. AZ 900. But if you go all the way up, you've got a AZ 305, which is an architect level certification that is very difficult. So, yeah, that's it. And then if you go from left to you have the communications, network security, IAM, identity and access management, security architecture, assess assets security and risk management, security assessment and testing, and on all the way till your security operations and hacker certification. Yeah, this is a really great guide. I think it's still good, to be honest with you. There's some things that are a bit off, like I think the CASP has changed, so he needs to change that. There's a couple certs on here that have upgraded. Yeah, CASP is one of them. This is now Security X, and then I think the CAP certifications on here, which is now called the CGRC. Oh, he updated this. So some of these are a little dated, but for the most part, I think it's still good to go. He listed 483 certifications since July 2024, but I think it's still good. Just to give you a visual representation of how these certifications go, because a lot of people throw certifications around. They'll ask, like the question I got earlier about it, besides Security Plus, what GRC cert should I take? Here's a whole bunch of them. These ones in the middle, these ones in black here, are in the security and risk management section. And he specifically mentions GRC. Starting from the bottom, you've got a whole bunch of these certifications here, right? Going all the way up to the highest level one, which is a GSE, which is a $7,000 course that consists of, I think, 10 exams or something. It's extremely difficult. And then you got the CISSP concentrations, which is another level of CISSP that goes into these different concentrations, that specific areas of security that are really up there with the expert, all the way down to the Security Plus, which is right here. And I was mentioning that CGRC I thought was a good entry level one, but they got it here on intermediate. I mentioned before there's a whole bunch of other certifications that are GRC type. And let me see if I don't recognize most of these, but there's the GSEC. I've heard of that one from SANS. There is let me see, another one is the SSCP. I know that one is a ISC 2 squared. It's like half the CISSP I've heard. Let me see if there's another good one here. I'm trying to see if there's one that I recognize that is notable. But there's just so many here that are not like talked about or known, that I've seen around, but I don't see it like cited usually, or I don't see it on on the job descriptions. Like they specifically want this certification. CGRC I have seen, Security Plus I've seen, GSEC I've seen, but a lot of these other ones I just haven't seen them. And that's no shade on these. They might be good. Here's one, the CGEIT, which is, I think, is this from, oh, that's from Mile 2. Let me see. There's one from ISACA that's pretty good. That's an ISO 27001. It's one of these. Anyway, yeah, I think it's still relevant. So if you guys have any questions about certifications, or if you're curious about, okay, hey, what certification should I get that is for incident handling or pen testing, or where does it rank on the scale? One thing you could do is go here, take it, and then put it into something like Indeed to see how many people are looking for that particular certification. So that might help you out a little bit. I can tell you right now, for an entry level security person, Security Plus, they put it down here on beginner level, but let me tell you something. It is so damn marketable still. It's still so damn marketable that it's worth your time. It's really worth your time. Because as soon as you put it on, like I'm telling you, a lot of jobs specifically say, I want you to have this. Or you get in the job and they're like, hey, you need to go get it. So it's still extremely relevant. This whole chart is extremely relevant still, even though it hasn't been updated. It's 2 years old. This thing is nice. And he's got like a little donation button here too, if you're interested. Okay, let me see here. It's too bad I couldn't get TikTok to work. Once again, I had some sound issues. So I apologize for that. Sucks. But I normally have some really good conversations coming from TikTok. Do you know about certification discounted vouchers? I know that there's some that you can get them from some boot camps will give them. And then I think there's a couple of there might be a couple of trainers on instructors on Udemy that give them out. Udemy, if you buy their course, they have some kind of a deal where you get like 10% off or something like that. So you can check there. But off the top of my head, I don't know of any great ones. But I know that when I was in the military, they put us through some boot camps. They gave us a whole bunch of free vouchers, but we had to take them in a certain amount of time to get them for free. And it was a lot. So let me see. I missed one of these here. I'm working with a SEAM right now, Azure Cloud Building workbooks and some detections on with KQL. Man, that's awesome. That sounds like some cool work right there. Let me see if there's any other ones I missed. Okay, that's it, guys. Just so you guys know, real soon I'm going to be releasing another free AWS. It's going to combine the first 2 books I did, so just be looking out for that if you happen to miss the other free books that I gave out. That's coming out really soon. I'm also redoing my NIST GRC Risk Management Framework Foundations course if you're interested in getting that. And a lot of times, like my community gets it for free. I'll beta test it with my guys in the group, and so if that's incentive for you to join. But if not, it's going to be a fairly decent price. Keep following. I got more free stuff coming. I just got to work on it, which is why I'm going to get off of here and go work on that stuff right now. And I'll keep you guys updated on what's going on with the job front. Unfortunately, just to give you an overview, yeah, it's because they're just not. If you've been in this space for a while, you know that people they don't really hire in this time frame. So that's what's going on. I am getting contacts, but it's from you guys. It's from people who watch me or reaching out and saying, "Hey, Bruce, we got a job here, man. Apply here." I gotten more than one, like several. So I really appreciate that. There's nothing going on right just yet, but I know that something soon is gonna come down as it always does. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Larry, for the $10. Thanks, security expert. Zane, thank you so much. Everybody else watches here and all your support and your watching every week and everything and encouraging words in these dark times. I really appreciate it and keeps me going. All right, guys. See